one of the primary concerns of the founding fathers when they created a method whereby to elect the president was creating a tyrant of their own making. So the electoral college was not just a compromise to satisfy the theoretical issues between the large and small states, although that was definitely part of it, but was also a manner in which to ensure that the founding fathers did not create this tyrant. So they wanted to have two kinds of majorities. They wanted to have a majority of people and a majority of states. This led to what we know today as the Electoral College. So the way it was going to work was each state would select electors in whatever manner they wish. So the way it originally worked and the way that it works now is not the same. So in back in the day, the states, when they elected the electors, it was those electors who actually decided how the state would vote. This idea of the primary today was part of the populist progressive era that changed the manner by which the Electoral College operates. So originally, the state would select electors, and they could do that any way they want. They could have the state legislature decide who they were. They could have the people vote for them, whatever manner they wish. That's how it would happen. And then those electors would meet in the state capitol and vote for a particular candidate. Once all those votes were in for all the states, once all those votes were in, the candidate needed a majority of electoral votes to win the office. A plurality wasn't enough. You had to have a majority to become president of the United States. The large states liked the Electoral College. So again, we're going back to the way it originally operated. The large states liked the way the Electoral College was going to operate because they would have a greater say, as well as they should, because they had more of the population. But the small states also liked it because they knew that they would have a greater proportional say. So, for instance, take North Dakota. North Dakota has 3 electoral votes. So every state gets the number of electoral votes as they have members of the House and members of the Senate. So North Dakota has 2 members of the Senate and 1 member of the House, giving them 3 electoral votes. All right, California, on the other hand, has 55 electoral votes, but they have a population of 39,510,000, whereas North Dakota's population is 718,181. And so if you do the math, what you find that North Dakota, the citizens of North Dakota, get an electoral vote for every 254,020 people, whereas the people of California get 1 electoral vote for every 762,062. So you can see here how the smaller states have a greater proportional say than do the large states. Now, this is an extreme example, but it makes the point. And so this was then also acceptable to the small states. There were other issues going on as well. Namely, in addition to that idea that they would have greater proportional say, the small states also knew that you had to have a majority in the House of Representatives to become, in the Electoral College to become president. If you didn't have a majority in the Electoral College, the decision would then move to the House of Representatives, where each state delegation would cast 1 vote. So the state delegation of California, since there's 53 members of the House of Representatives right now, they would only cast 1 vote, even though there's 53 of them. And North Dakota would get 1 vote. And so this, they thought, would happen often. They thought the Electoral College would not yield a majority for 1 candidate because the Founding Fathers did not anticipate the development of political parties giving national support to a candidate. And so they thought it would jump into the House of Representatives often, where the small states realized that they would have just as much say as the large states. So this was acceptable to them. In those days, they believed that each state would vote for their own favorite political son, their own favorite politician, because of the development of political parties. That didn't happen. The electoral college vote has been thrown into the House of Representatives 3 times throughout our history. It hasn't happened lately, but there it is. That's how it works. Now, let me give you an example of the electoral college. This is the 2004 election between George Bush and John Kerry. So looking at this map, the blue represents the votes for the states that went Democrat. So you can see here, Kerry took the West Coast and the Northeast and around the Great Lakes, and George Bush took the rest. So if just looking at the map, it looks like George Bush just cleaned up on Kerry. But if you take and make this into a cartogram, sorry, I got that phone call. Let me try and pick up where I think I was. So if you take this map and turn it into a cartogram, then all of a sudden it doesn't look so close. So here it is. The cartogram is now based upon each state is based upon the size of the electoral votes they have. So you can see here's California, and North Dakota all but disappears. So now this is looking much closer as far as who would be president, but it does appear that there is a bit more red than there is blue. Now we're going to do this cartogram by county. And all of a sudden it gets a little more muddled. So what you see here in California, you see this big county, and this ends up being Los Angeles County. These counties right here are the liberal counties around San Francisco. You see up here in the Northeast, just New York, a lot of support for the Democratic candidate as usual. Now let's take this and let's not say it's just one thing or the other. Let's muddy the waters a bit. So now we're going to use our colors, and it's just not all or nothing. So these now are counties based upon the vote. So the greater the percentage of the vote for the Democrat, you can see it's very blue. Where it's muddied, it's kind of this purple. So in here where you have the more of the red, you can see a lot of support throughout here for the for Bush. But now let's take this and make it into a cartogram. Now it is very difficult to see who has won from this thing. In fact, it looks almost as if the Democrat would have won. But if you do the math, the Republican won. But this is exactly the thing that the Founding Fathers wanted to avoid. They wanted to avoid close elections. They wanted there to be a clear-cut winner. And so that was another aspect of the Electoral College. So now let's take a look at some of these Electoral College maps. And you can see here, particularly when we don't muddy the waters with the cartograms, you can see here that clearly for Trump there is a majority of states. Now this is again one of those odd elections where the winning candidate in the Electoral College did not win the popular vote. That's because there's so much population in these areas right here. But that is generally not the way it happens. So it's not enough to win the popular votes. You've got to win the votes. You've got to win votes in states by states. And Clinton did not win the right states. Majority of votes and majority of states are what the Founding Fathers were going for. You can see here with Obama, even though there's a lot more red on this map, if you were to take into distort this by population, there would be more blue. And so Obama wins. Obama and McCain, same kind of idea here. Bush versus Kerry, again, if we were to we've already seen that distorted with the cartograms. Bush versus Gore, this was a very close election. If Gore would have just won Tennessee, his home state, Bush would not have had a majority. It would have been thrown into the House of Representatives. There you had it. That was Gore's mistake. He did not win Tennessee, his home state. Candidates always win their home states, almost always. Gore didn't do it. Clinton versus Dole and Perot, 3-man race, but clearly Clinton has got it. Clinton versus Bush, and Perot. Again, clearly Clinton's got it. And here we're going to get into some maps that the founding fathers would love. Here you can clearly see that in Bush versus Dukakis in 1988 that Bush won. This is exactly what the founding fathers wanted to see. These maps that we've seen earlier, the founding fathers would not be as impressed with them. Another one, Reagan versus Mondale. Mondale only wins one state, and he picked up a couple, 3 more votes in states where they can split. But he won his home state, a lesson 2 that Al Gore should have taken. Carter versus Ford. Carter got it. Carter got it. He picked up enough throughout there to get the majority, even though Ford had all these states over here. Just a few more. Nixon versus McGovern. Nixon killed him. Of course, there's some crazy stuff going on. Nixon versus Humphrey and Wallace. You can see Nixon in the red. Wallace here is in the yellow. Just dominates. And then FDR versus Hoover. Again, the founding fathers would have loved this map. Clear decision as to who won. There's nothing to contest. Nothing to contest. So this is really the point of all that. The Electoral College was in part designed to help prevent close elections and therefore questions of legitimacy. They did not want the kind of dynamic we saw after Bush versus Gore, where Gore is complaining that there was miscounting in Florida and other states, and therefore there needed to be a recount. And so because of that, we were up in the air as to who was going to be the next president of the United States. They did not want that, and for the most part, the Electoral College has done that. We will stop right there with this one, and we will move to presidential removal in the next slide, in the next film or video.